Hello, this is Pam. We are going to get started right away. I'm going to give everyone a minute, or a few seconds, I should say, to start joining us. My name is Pam Bartha, and I am so excited to spend this time with you in the second part of really uncovering a lot of new research that is showing what the true cause of multiple sclerosis is. So last week, we started talking about how new research is showing that parasitic infections are involved with multiple sclerosis. This week, we're going to be talking about fungal infections or fungal overgrowth and multiple sclerosis, how evidence, lots of studies, and personally in my own journey, but also in helping a lot of students recover, we found that fungal overgrowth is a really big factor in multiple sclerosis. So I just want to welcome you. I'm just going to see who's here. So hi, Norris. And what I would like you to do is please share this with people that you know are searching for answers. So this is not just about multiple sclerosis. It's anyone who is suffering with any type of chronic disease symptoms. Hello, Jose, out in Ecuador. So my name is Pam Bartha. I am the author of Become a Wellness Champion, and I am the founder of Live Disease Free. And I'm super excited to spend the next few minutes with you talking about how multiple sclerosis is often associated with fungal overgrowth in the body. I'm going to share some science with you, and then I'm going to share with you why it is so important for us to treat it, and then what are the different types of chemicals and how it can affect fungal overgrowth in our body can affect us, especially when it gets to the high levels as we see in chronic disease, and then what we can do about turning it around. Last week, if you did not join us, last week I did talk about, I was also talking about infection. So the next few weeks, we are talking about the different types of infection that are involved with and causing not just multiple sclerosis, but all kinds of chronic disease. So last week we talked just a little bit about parasites. It's a huge topic. I just covered some brand new research that's coming out where they're finding nematodes in the central nervous system of people that have multiple sclerosis. Nematodes or nematodes are little worms. And there's this wonderful pathologist, so go back, it's February the 14th, I believe, last Wednesday, that was Valentine's Day, where I shared that research. Today, we are gonna focus on fungal overgrowth and multiple sclerosis. So I have just collected a few studies. And you should have seen, we did send out before to anybody that's connected with us, we have this beautiful resource, and I think we posted on our Facebook page too, on Become a Wellness Champion. So if you didn't get a chance to look at that, look at it later. And what I've done is I've collected a whole bunch of studies showing several different types of infections that are involved with multiple sclerosis. We really have to understand the cause, because when we understand the cause, then we have hope of a cure, right? Because if we don't really know what we're supposed to do to treat MS, then we can't get better. But if we know what's causing it, then we can target all of our therapies towards the cause. So please share, please like this, please give me some love and some hearts, because I'm staring at my little phone, little dot here, and it's really nice to have some interaction. So I'm going to start with the research first. And the first study that I want to share with you, and I'm going to simplify this down for you. So the first study is, the title of it is Evaluation of APR1 gene expression in Candida albicans strains isolated from patients with multiple sclerosis. That's a mouthful. So what that means is that when you have Candida that is more aggressive, it's more in the disease form, it expresses this certain gene. And thank goodness for scientists, they figured out it's the APR1 gene. And this study, so they know that when this gene is expressed in Candida, which is a type of yeast, so there's several different, we're going to talk more about the different types of fungi that are involved with chronic disease and MS. It's not just one. But right now we're talking about Candida, which is a type of yeast, which is a type of fungus. So the expression of this specific gene of Candida, it's really important in the development, like for people that are developing this systemic fungal overgrowth, which makes them really sick. And results from this study showed that this gene expression in Candida was isolated from MS patients. They feel that it's a really important factor for invasive Candida albicans strains in the progression of multiple sclerosis disease. So they feel that when they're seeing people that have MS, they're seeing that the Candida is expressing this aggressive gene, and so they really feel that Candida is a factor, a really big factor in multiple sclerosis. The second study the title of the second study is The Role of Candida Albicans in the Severity in Multiple Sclerosis. So this is a 2016 study. These are really current. The one before was a 2016 study also. So this study compared the activity of a specific enzyme in Candida albicans between multiple sclerosis patients and a healthy group. So Candida albicans this type of yeast can produce all kinds of different things. And one is an enzyme, and it's SEA. All right, so with this enzyme, they found that the level of SEA of Candida albicans in MS patients was significantly higher than in a healthy group. They also found that the higher level of SEA, that enzyme that Candida produces, it was more severe. The higher the level of this enzyme, the more severe a person suffered with multiple sclerosis. So in people that had a more progressive multiple sclerosis, they found a higher amount of that enzyme than in people that maybe had relapsing remitting and were not as disabled or not dealing with the severe progression. So their results found that this enzyme was the biggest factor of all the factors they tested in the severity of multiple sclerosis. That's really huge. Their results suggested that the level of this enzyme and perhaps the capacity of Candida albicans, other isolates from Candida albicans, to invade our tissue is associated with the severity of multiple sclerosis. Really huge. Now on to another study. Fungal infections in cerebral spinal fluid from some patients with multiple sclerosis. So they're actually finding fungal infections in our central nervous system, in our spinal fluid. It should not be there. We originally thought that our spinal fluid was sterile, and that is not the case with us that are dealing with chronic disease. This is a 2013 study, so these are really current studies. And they share that fungal infection can be found in the cerebral spinal fluid with some MS patients. This may be a risk factor in this disease, and it could also help us in understanding how MS starts, looking at the cause, and that's exactly what we're talking about. The fourth study is a 2011 study, Fungal Infections in a Patient with Multiple Sclerosis. And in this study, they found antibodies against not just one Candida species. So within Candida, there are many cousins. There are well over 20 different cousins. So it's not just one Candida can make us sick. There can be many different types of cousins of them. And they found that antibodies against Candida species, as well as Candida-related antigens, were also detected in the cerebral spinal fluid, again, of this person that suffered with multiple sclerosis. Our findings provided support of the notion that disseminated mycosis, so that's a big word. That just means that when we've had fungal overgrowth in our body for a while, what it does is it starts to move into different organs, and it'll go into many different organs, including our central nervous system. So we do not want disseminated mycosis, that is for sure. But what they said is that their findings provide support for the notion that disseminated mycosis was present in this patient with multiple sclerosis, meaning that the fungal infection is systemic inside the central nervous system included. Another study, Fungal Toxins and Multiple Sclerosis, a Compelling Connection, 2010. A surprisingly coherent relationship can be made between multiple sclerosis and fungal toxins. So certain disease-causing fungi, they live in tissue in our body that is non-neural, so it's not in our nerves, so it's just maybe in muscle tissue, etc. And they release toxins that target and destroy central nervous system glial cells. So what a glial cell is, I'll explain it here in a minute, But without these glial support cells, the myelin breaks down, triggering the onset of multiple sclerosis and its associated symptoms. So we can have fungal overgrowth in tissue, and that fungal overgrowth is producing poisons that is targeting or destroying certain cells that are really important for maintaining our nervous system, especially the myelin sheath on our nerves, and that is really what is deteriorating. So that can be another factor. So they concluded, we propose here that fungal toxins are the underlying cause of multiple sclerosis and thus may offer an avenue towards an effective cure. That's really significant. Another study, so I'm just going to give you a couple more here because I just want you to see that there is research, and there should be a lot more research. But why isn't there? Because who can afford to study fungal infections in multiple sclerosis, right? There's lots of different antifungal medications. It's something that people cannot, or I shouldn't say people, but certain companies cannot afford to research. So we don't spend a lot of time researching it, but luckily these different researchers have. So this is a 2010 study, association between multiple sclerosis and Candida species, evidence from a case control study. So this is 2010. In this case controlled study, so what they mean is they took somebody with MS and they took someone else who didn't have MS, so they're comparing. We found a significant association between elevated antibodies to 4 different types of Candida species, so 4 different cousins in this subject. In summary, the results from the study suggest that Candida species infection may be associated with the increased odds of having multiple sclerosis. The 7th study, just a couple more, fungal infections in patients with multiple sclerosis, 2008. And in this study, our results show evidence of that in all 7 of the patients that were studied, there are signs of fungal infection. Some of these patients had high antibody titers or antibody levels against Candida species. So when we have a lot of antibodies against Candida, that means that we have an active Candida infection in our body. 6 out of the 7 patients contained fungal DNA in their blood. All right, you should not have fungus in your blood. And fungal antigens were present in practically all of them. Both yeast antigens and antibodies against yeast were found in the cerebral spinal fluid, again, of these MS patients. So these researchers concluded that either fungal overgrowth in the body is the cause of multiple sclerosis, or maybe we're having some immune suppression and then we're having something else is causing, another infection might be causing our immune system to be suppressed, and then we have a lot of fungal overgrowth. So they don't know, but that's their conclusion. And then the last. This is actually not quite the last, the second last. Multiple sclerosis functional approaches, 2003. Towns, I won't read that part, I'll just keep it simple. In our study, 100% of the MS patients demonstrated an abnormally high dysbiosis index. If you've hung around with me, you know what dysbiosis means. Dysbiosis means that the microbes in our body are out of balance. We have too many bad microbes and not enough good microbes. And when we're out of balance, it's called dysbiosis. All right. So in this study, they found 100% of the patients, and it's especially in the gut, in the intestines, where all of them had abnormally high dysbiosis. And that's something that we see in our students all the time. So they also found a frequent association of candidiasis, meaning a candida infection, and multiple sclerosis. They also found elevated anti-candida antibodies in 70% of MS patients that were tested. And their study showed the evidence supporting the relationship between gut abnormalities and brain pathologies. We talked about that last week, remember that our second brain is our intestines, our digestive tract, I should say. It's all of the different nerves that are lining the digestive tract. I think that was like over 500 million of them, of the nerves that are all interconnected. So in our intestines, we have a lot of different nerves. So whatever is happening in the intestines, there's a direct link to our brain. And that's why they're saying that whatever's happening, the abnormalities in the gut, it's really affecting brain and giving brain pathology. And then I did want to sneak in one last one, Dr. Truss. Really important because this is 1981 and he's one of the first researchers that I followed. 1981. Hero doctor. He knew with treating all of his people that had chronic disease that infection was involved. And I think his book is called The Missing Diagnosis, and I still have it. So he reported in a study that was published in 1981 that he was able to resolve the symptoms of multiple sclerosis in 5 cases following antifungal therapy. 1981. That is the sad reality. We've known this for so many years. When I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1988, I was so incredibly blessed to find at least 4 different books written by medically trained doctors that were helping people to recover from MS and all chronic disease. And what they were doing was that they were treating infections. And if you treat infections successfully, fungus being one of them, it's not the only one. So it's not that we're all just gonna, go on antifungal medications and we're gonna be cured, but it is one of the big factors of infection. When we have serious chronic disease, there are multiple infections involved. Really important to know, multiple infections involved, but this is a big one. I see this all the time. This was a big factor for me also. So that is just some research showing that when we have chronic disease, all types of really serious chronic disease, cancer, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, ALS, that fungus is involved. Next, I would like to go to, so I've been able to live MS-free for the past 28 years because I have focused on treating infection. That is my success. It's been a lot of work, a lot of diligence, but well worth it. So the next thing that I want to share with you is when we have this fungal overgrowth in our body, how does this impact us? Well, we know that with fungi, there are at least 400 different types of fungi that can make us sick. And there's probably more, but that's what we know of in science. And we know that they can produce, like if we're just going to narrow it down to one, let's just talk about Candida albicans because we only have so much time together. So if we talk about Candida albicans, we know that it can produce at least 70 different poisons and it can cause at least 80 different symptoms in the body. If we have small amounts of it if our ecosystem in our intestines is really in balance and we have just a little tiny bit of Candida in it and it's in the form that's non-pathogenic, it looks like a little seed, it's like a little round ball, then it doesn't really cause any problems. But the problem is many of us go on antibiotics, especially when we were children. I was on a lot of antibiotics. Maybe you guys can relate. Have you guys been on antibiotics maybe early on in your life? For whether it's for ear infections, tonsillitis, bronchitis, maybe you had your appendix removed. Maybe like me, you had acne and I was on different antibiotics for acne, and that was probably one of the biggest factors for me. So when we go on antibiotics, it wipes out a lot of the good microbes, the bacteria, but it doesn't touch fungi. It does not touch yeast. It does not touch Aspergillus, mold, any of those others. And so they start to grow because now they have lots of room and they love it when we eat processed carbs. It feeds them. So then they start to grow and grow. They start to push through the intestinal wall. They start to travel to other parts of the body. And we know with some of the chemicals that they produce, I'm just going to talk about a few of them so you can see how they can make you feel terrible. We know that they're massive producers of alcohol. That's a really big one, alcohol. So ethanol is a really it makes us feel like we're drunk. Some of you have had foggy head, right? You may feel like you're drunk, right? Dizzy, whatever, but we know that it can produce so much alcohol if we have a lot that we could end up with something called autobrewery. And autobrewery is a medical term meaning that we have a lot of alcohol produced. So when we're especially sick and full of these infections, we really do not want to be having any extra alcohol because your liver's already trying to break down the alcohol from the fungal overgrowth. We know that fungi and Candida, let's just talk about Candida, but Candida is a massive producer of acetaldehyde. And acetaldehyde is that hangover chemical. Maybe you've had too many drinks the night before. It is a neurotoxin. It makes you feel like you were hit by a truck. In the early days when I was sick with multiple sclerosis, if I ate the wrong foods at night and I woke up the next day and I felt so wasted, I used to tell my kids, oh, I feel like I was hit by a truck. And it's true. It can produce formaldehyde, acetaldehyde. We know that it can produce massive amounts of leukotrienes, which are chemicals that tighten the airways, and you have lots of mucus produced that would be with asthma. We also know that either our body can produce prostaglandins or the infections themselves can produce prostaglandins. And what that does is the pain chemical. Maybe we're having symptoms before our menses, or maybe we're having migraines, maybe we're having premature labor. Those symptoms are caused by prostaglandins. And so we don't treat the infection so that we don't have them anymore. All we do is we take ibuprofen to block the production of prostaglandins. We know that fungus and Candida produces massive amounts of acids. Maybe you feel that you're acidic, right? And if you feel that you're acidic and you're trying to alkalize your body, we know that it's a massive producer of acids. So it's important to eat lots of vegetables and to drink lots of water and to have enough minerals, to make sure you take enough supplements so that you alkalize your body. But the fact is that if you have a ton of fungal overgrowth in your body, that you're going to continue, it will continue to produce tons and tons of acids, and you're still going to be acidic. Another big factor of why our immune system can be so run down is that, there we go, we're back. Sorry about that. So they are massive producers of these enzymes. We talked about one enzyme, but they're massive producers of enzymes that actually will digest our antibodies. And when our antibodies are being digested, that directly suppresses our immune system. All right, so I just talked about maybe like less than 10, and there's over 70 different poisons that are produced by just even Candida. And then there's other types of fungi. We know that a lot of us that have chronic disease, we have high levels of mold inside of us. We could have Aspergillus, which is another type of fungus. So I'm just talking about one type. I didn't go into the studies about Aspergillus or into mold or anything like that. But I can tell you that a lot of these beautiful hero doctors that I'm following, they do recognize that mold is a big part. And so it's a different type of fungus. And so when we're treating them, we want to be treating all of them. We want to recognize all of this. So now we know that the fungal overgrowth is a big part of multiple sclerosis. And we also know a lot of the different, just a few of the different types of chemicals that can be produced by fungal overgrowth. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is when we're dealing with this fungal overgrowth, like how do we turn this around and putting it into perspective too. That's really important. All right, because we don't want to just think, okay, my goodness, if I just treat fungal overgrowth, I'm going to be healed, I'm going to be cured, because over these next few weeks, you're going to see that there are multiple different infections that are involved. So we have to treat the fungal overgrowth because it directly suppresses our immune system. It makes us more susceptible to even Lyme. It makes us more susceptible to parasites. And the way that we do it is, it's really tricky because, let me backtrack for a minute. If you've had fungal overgrowth in your body for years, it sets up this network of roots in your tissue, all right? It looks like this white, like threads all together, and there's actually pictures of it, and I don't have it here with me, but as I get better with technology, I'm gonna share that with you, but you can probably find it online. There's like Candida libraries. So it's not enough to just eat like a Candida diet, follow a Candida diet where you're lowering your carbs and you're taking some different herbs. That's fine for somebody who's just been on antibiotics and has no chronic disease and does not have a lot of deep-rooted fungal overgrowth issues. By the time we have these big disease labels like MS, Parkinson's, ALS, diabetes, cancer, we have an overgrowth of fungal overgrowth that is deep rooted in our tissues, all right? So it takes more to turn this around. And we do this in I have a program that I help people to recover, and I have a really great free training you can listen to where I talk about all the steps that we take. In a general sense, if you are dealing with chronic disease, you have to do a lot more than the basic Candida diet. There's just too many carbs in that. So we go really, really low with the carbs. Then we have to support our body because our body has been suffering from all these poisons that are produced from the fungal overgrowth, from the parasites, from the Lyme, from the viruses, etc. So we have to support our body. Then once we've supported our body, then we start to look at, okay, which microbes are bothering us the most? Which do we have the most symptoms of? And then we start to target those first. So we may have parasites and we may have fungal overgrowth and we may have some of these other bacterial infections, but what is the strongest? What is presenting the strongest and give you the most symptoms? So we start to knock those back so that people start to have relief. And you have to work with somebody with that. It's way too hard to treat infections by yourself because you don't know what to take, and I would not recommend taking anything if you're on medication. You have to work with somebody because herbs, they are natural medicines and they will interact with certain medications. So you've got to work with somebody. But you can do a lot of prep work yourself. And then when you get to the killing phase, this is where when you start to treat the parasites and you start to treat the fungal overgrowth and you start to treat the Lyme, right? You start to have really big shifts in symptoms. This is where people start to notice that, oh my goodness, I can go out for supper and I can drink, I can have a beautiful sparkling water with lime and I didn't have to go to the bathroom at all. And I can sleep through the night. Or I don't have drop foot, or my balance is back, or my spasticity is gone. And it starts to decrease as you treat these infections. And fungal overgrowth is super important to treat. You have to knock that back with all of the others. It's really linked with cancer especially. And there are students and people that have multiple sclerosis and they do come down with cancer also. So please share this Facebook live with other people. Make sure to like it, share it. Please help us to get the word out, because the more of us that understand this, we can start making different choices in our treatment and we can start to get better so much quicker. We have to have a deep understanding of why we're sick to begin with. That's the important thing, because then we can pick the proper treatments so we can recover, truly recover. All right, so that is basically the steps, and there's more to it. We've got to build a healthy lifestyle. We've got to bring in balance, right? We've got to correct nutritional deficiencies. Really what I teach is I teach people that we have to become the director of our health. That is your most important job. And by me doing this for myself, it's allowed me to live 28 years free of multiple sclerosis. And I'm now a grandmother, and I am helping many other people, many wellness champions. Some of you are on here, wellness champions, send some love over. But I'm helping others recover right now too, and it's so super exciting. And we are building an army of wellness champions. And with that, we are gonna bring change so much quicker. That is the important thing, is to bring change, because it's really awful to see people suffering. All right, so that is basically the plan. And if you want to find out more about the steps, because I just kind of touched on them, I missed a few of them too, as far as, we need to make sure that we're cleaning up the environment tremendously, right? And working on our mindset and building the healthy lifestyle. And there's many more steps. And I talk about that in my free training. Right now, it is not at the top of this post, but just check back in a few minutes after I'm done. And I will be sharing that link with you, and you can listen to that free training. And there's a ton of case studies of people that have recovered from multiple sclerosis, wellness champions that have recovered, and you will love to hear their successes. It's so incredibly inspiring. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go to questions to see if you guys have any questions. I'll take a couple of minutes here. So I first have to refresh this page, and then we will, if I can do that here. All right, so I'm gonna There we go, and I will just pull up the, hopefully, yes, there we go. Yay, I figured out how to find all the questions. So I'll go to the bottom. You are so welcome, Billy. Hi, Karen, Calvin, and thank you so much for posting that in there. It was either Christine or Caroline is helping me, and I know Danielle also. There's a team behind me. I'm not just here by myself. It's thank you to some amazing ladies right now that are helping me. Hi, Joanna, and see if there's any questions. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Marilyn, you would love to hear the names of the medications for the worms. Yes, thank you for the thumbs up. I don't have those in front of me. The key is that you first of all have to look at your symptoms, and you do have to work with somebody who has experience treating parasites. But what you can do is on that post in February, I did put the link for the video, and the doctors will love it. So if you have an integrative doctor, then what you would do is you would just, or I shouldn't say integrative, but a doctor who is really open to helping you to recover and is willing to look outside the box. They may not have a lot of experience with parasites, but what you do is you would share that link with him, and then he can listen to it and he can see the nematodes, and he will know. He's a doctor, he's trained in medicine. He can look up. You can also talk to different pharmacists if you want, but unfortunately, it's quite new at this time. You really need to work with somebody. And I know with us, with our wellness champions, I do support them through the killing phase, and I just can't give advice over these Facebook Lives because I don't know anything about you, and I don't want people to start, self-prescribing, etc. Because I'm not even going to get into that. When you get to the killing phase, you've got to, and just remember that it's really neat that there are doctors, there's one doctor in particularly that has been treating parasitic infections, and when he catches it early enough with multiple sclerosis, that the lesions go away within just a few weeks, within maybe 6 weeks of the treatment, or I would say 1 month to a month and a half. But remember, they're not totally recovered, and that's what we see when we're helping people to recover, is that as you treat one group of infections, you have certain symptoms go away. And then you start to treat the other ones, and then you start to have others go away. And then it's not just one nematode or nematode that is causing all of your MS symptoms. Those nematodes, they bring in, thank you for all your love. Those nematodes bring in Lyme. They bring in fungal overgrowth in their intestines, so they're transporters. So when they get into our central nervous system, they're carrying their own ecosystem, which they poop out into our central nervous system, into our cerebral spinal fluid. So they introduce nematodes. They introduce eggs, obviously, but they introduce Lyme, Borrelia, which is documented. So we have to treat the Borrelia. We have to treat the fungal overgrowth. We have to treat other different parasites. So you don't just have those nematodes, there are many others. But it's exciting that we're getting so close to understanding the true cause, and it's coming out snowballing with all the research. All right, so hello Norris and Jose and Marilyn, Christine, hello. Leanne, I'm just looking to see if there's any last little quick questions that you want me. Hello from chilly Manitoba. It's terrible. I'm in Canada too, and it's so cold. It's awful. Hello, Bonnie. Yes, thank you. So Robin is going to talk to me. Cool. Bonnie, researchers should be personally involved with MS. Yes, I know. But the problem is that people that have MS are probably too sick to do the research. And remember, the big dilemma that we have is that it costs millions of dollars to do research. So companies are only going to do research where they know that they're going to get a return for their investment. And they're not going to really get a return for investment studying worms or studying fungal overgrowth or even Lyme, right? So that's the big thing, because it's all, unfortunately, it all boils down to money. So, Amy, is there any way to be tested for Candida or fungus? Honestly, that's what I forgot to mention, is that there are symptoms for fungal overgrowth. And I'm just going to rattle a few off right now because that's really important. So maybe you're somebody who has had a lot of constipation in the past. That's not always just fungus, but it is a very common symptom. Constipation, gas, bloating, but things like dandruff, for children, cradle cap is fungus, and sinus issues. Maybe you have a lot of sinus infections, or you might have, is called rhinitis. That would be like a chronic sinus issue. We could have fingernail or toenail infections. We could have things like, for men, jock itch, or we could have anal itch, but that could be from parasites also. Rashes on our body is really common for women when we're nursing. When I was nursing my last child, I would get plugged milk ducts, and that can be also Candida. And I know it's Candida because the only way I could get it to stop was by taking diflucan. So remember that if you don't do all of the prep work and you just take an antifungal, it's going to come back again really quickly, right? So you have to do, if you want your life back, you have to do the proper steps. And I share that on my free training. So things like dandruff, things like rashes, fingernail, toenail infections. I'm trying to think what else. Allergies is a big one. So allergies, it's really common with allergies, food sensitivities. I'm just trying to think, yeah, those would be just some of them. But especially the fingernail, toenail also, not everybody has it, but we all have different symptoms. And I think that would be it. There's lots more, but I just can't think of them right now. So the best way to tell if you have a fungal infection is honestly through symptoms. That's the best way, because a lot of our tests, and this goes for parasites, this goes for Lyme and for fungus, they give us a lot of false negatives and they are not very accurate. So the key is that we have to go by symptoms. That is the biggest factor of telling. Thank you so much for the love. All right. You're so welcome, Becky. It is such a pleasure. I hope you guys share this, and let's get the word out. Let's get everyone understanding this is infection. This should not be hidden, right? This has been known for 30 years, and it's time that we start to really introduce this to our healthcare professionals. They want us to get well. And as with my students, as they're getting well, this is really helping the healthcare professionals to see that there is a better way to treat multiple sclerosis and all chronic disease. So, last questions here. You're very welcome, Jolana. And Amy, fascinating, so informative. My nurse practitioner has 4 family members with multiple sclerosis. 3 are paralyzed. So heartbreaking, Robin, so terribly heartbreaking. I have seen that with people. I've spoken to at least 700 people that have multiple sclerosis. And yes, there are instances where there's several people in the family. It is so heartbreaking. It has to stop, and it can stop. You guys have to help me. So what are some foods to stay away from? Sugar. So the biggest fuel, that's a really good question. The biggest fuel for fungus, it loves sugar. And sugar from fruit, sugar from pop, from chips, when we eat a lot of carbs, even the white flour, the white rice, that feeds it because it breaks down to glucose. And there's other simple sugars. And honestly, fungus does not care where the sugar comes from. It can be from organic honey. It can be from organic maple syrup. And so what we're finding is that for longevity, the lower amount of sugars you have, the more you keep your blood sugar steady, right, the longer you live. Because especially when you're bringing in a lot of low-carb vegetables, and that's what we eat. We eat a lot of low-carb vegetables. We keep our total grams of carbs as we're treating the infections really low so that the infections are not as active, and then they're a little bit easier to treat, but it still takes work. So yes, sugar is the biggest factor. Sugar and carbohydrates, Pamela. That's what you would want to stay away from. All right, so the link for my free training, the masterclass training, you'll absolutely love it. There are so many successes, and I talk about the steps we take to help people recover. You'll find that as soon as I'm done, actually it is in the feed, but as soon as I'm done, I'll be posting it right in the post above this replay, all right? Awesome, so here going just the last few things, lots of comments, thank you guys. Okay, you're so welcome for the scientific background. So I just tried to make it simple for you, Deb, but what you can do is you can go to the resource that I created for you, and I'm gonna be adding more and more. It's very minimal. It's maybe 6 pages of scientific studies, but that doesn't even include Lyme, that doesn't even include chlamydia pneumoniae, that doesn't even include the parasitic worms. So it's gonna be growing and growing, and I want you guys to share it and get it out so that we can bring change. That's the only way. You guys are the wellness champions. Would apple cider vinegar help keep the sugar under control? No, no. If you eat sugar, you eat sugar and it'll feed the infection. So apple cider vinegar, some people say that it really helps with making your body the right terrain to be overcoming these infections. I personally haven't found it very helpful myself. I actually feel better if I don't have any apple cider vinegar. I'll have some fresh lemon or fresh lime on my salads. So this is where you listen to your body, but it will not offset sugar. If you're eating sugar, just remember, when you binge on sugar, those microbes that are causing your disability are binging with you, and they're producing a ton of poisons, and they are making you a lot more disabled. All right, so with that, I'm gonna let you guys go. So for more information of how you can become a wellness champion and live disease-free also, make sure to listen to my masterclass training. I'm so excited to share this with you, and please help us get the word out. Help us get this information out so that we can help people to recover and not suffer, right? We want to catch people and right away as soon as possible and help them recover. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. I'll be back next week. I'm going to be talking about Lyme, Borrelia, Babesia, Bartonella. All right, I'll be talking about all those infections. So until next week, we'll see you soon. Take care and bye-bye for now.